Democrats are charging Trump with incitement of insurrection over the deadly attack on Congress 1 week ago. By the end of the proceedings, there will be a decisive vote on impeachment. Democrats are expected to be joined by at least 5 Republicans. Some reports say as many as 20 in voting to impeach Donald Trump. That did not happen in his first impeachment, but this time there appears to be bipartisan support for the impeachment of Donald Trump. As we watch this, I want to introduce someone we're very pleased to have on our program today, Secretary William Cohen, who himself worked there on the House of Representatives for the state of Maine, also a senator, and then Secretary of Defense under Democratic President Bill Clinton. He's in Washington this morning. And Secretary Cohen, it's a pleasure to welcome you to our program today.
Great to be with you, Heather.
As we look at the live pictures that are going on, as I mentioned, Secretary Cohen, beginning now with the debate over some of the rules, the proceedings underway, we expect they will lead today to the impeachment of Donald Trump for the second time. Can we begin our conversation with you speaking to the historic nature of this moment?
Sure. Impeachment should be a very rare process. I was involved in the impeachment of Richard Nixon back in 1974. And at that time, I quoted from an English judge at that point who said that impeachment was like Goliath's sword, to be removed from the temple on great occasions only. And that was an important statement because it means the significance of the members of the House and the Senate overruling what the people of the country had done by electing a president. So it's a very, very strong initiative to take, given the historic nature of what we're doing. And the impeachment of Richard Nixon, there was bipartisan support for it, ultimately. And because he faced removal, conviction in the Senate, a number of several leading members of the GOP, the Republican Party, went to the White House to say, Mr. President, it's over. In this particular case, no one has been willing at this point to tell the president it's over because they don't know what will happen in the Senate. It's pretty clear that they're going to pass the impeachment resolution today. But frankly, I'm not sure the president cares about process. I'm not sure. I know he wasn't chastened by the first impeachment vote in the House, and I doubt very much whether he's going to be chastened by the second impeachment vote.
I was going to say it may have been over when those Republicans arrived for Richard Nixon, but it's clearly not. Donald Trump doesn't see the situation in that way. As he was leaving for Texas yesterday, as you perhaps heard, he said his comments a week ago in inciting that mob were totally appropriate, to use his words, totally appropriate. What do you think?
Well, you remember he said the same thing when he tried to extort the president of Ukraine to dig up dirt on Joe Biden, holding up money that Congress had voted to help Ukraine defend itself against Russia. And he said, totally appropriate conversation. No, it was totally corrupt. Then he had another conversation with the Secretary of State of Georgia, in which that was a totally corrupt conversation, in which it had just find me 11,780 votes. That's all I need. Got to do this for me, fellas, like the Goodfellas movie. Got to do it for me, Goodfellas. And that was totally corrupt. And now he's saying the same thing about language, which was clearly on its face calculated to incite that mob that stormed the Capitol and desecrated that Capitol. That was a building I went into for 24 years. And every day as I walked into that building, I looked up to it and I saw it as a sign of our great democracy and what we meant to the United States and to the world. And for that mob to have gotten through and to desecrate it, basically, I wouldn't go what they did while they were in it, defecating on the floors of that great Capitol. It's simply intolerable. The President of the United States has committed an impeachable act. He should be removed, and the sooner the better. I know people saying, well, it's only a week. In a week's time, he can still do a lot of damage. In a week's time, he could pull us even further into a chaotic situation. So for me, he can't leave soon enough. I hope he rests upon pardoning himself. I've asked publicly that Vice President Pence not pardon him. If he's going to be pardoned, let him pardon himself and let that be challenged in the courts in the years to come. But he has committed multiple acts of impeachment. This is the most serious because he's called into question the rule of law and tried to impose a law of mob rule on our country. Nothing could be as grave as what he has done.
I was going to ask you what your assessment was of the level of danger he poses to your country with just 7 days left in the presidency. And you said that you do see there still is a potential. I don't know what you think specifically the risk is that he poses at this point, but I'm also interested specifically what you think he could still do, but whether or not you think there are sufficient safeguards in place now to protect, I mean, it's extraordinary to say this, to protect the United States from the United States president.
A couple of things happened most recently. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, on behalf of the Joint Chiefs, sent a very strong letter to all of those in our military, saying that their obligation was to protect the Constitution, and that any assault upon democracy was unlawful. It was illegal. And that message was sent out to say the members of the military are duty-bound to follow the orders from the commander-in-chief, provided they're legal, constitutional, and ethical. And I think that was a very strong signal coming out of the military, the chiefs, of the Joint Chiefs, sending it to all the members of our military here and elsewhere, their obligation to the rule of law, to the Constitution. And you call, just a couple of weeks ago, there was concern that the president might call upon the military after invoking insurrection, the act of insurrection, to invoke the military and impose martial law upon 5 swing states to then try to overturn the election. And 10 former secretaries of defense, myself included, came out very strongly and said, no, this is totally illegal. This is not what your obligation is. And so we want to send the signal, the military do not follow an illegal order or one that's even questionable under the circumstances when it comes to overturning the election. So we've tried to make sure that our military forces do what their job is, and that is to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic, but not to engage in trying to overturn the election, which was fair and pretty conclusive.
I was going to say we were talking about the letter of which you were one of the 10 signatories, and really unprecedented nature of that you would have to release that in order to ensure that, to let people know that the election result was free and fair, and there it is there, and also urging him not to call in the military. But if we could look to the future, because it's a week out from the violence, but it's a week away from the inauguration. And there is some considerable concern, obviously. The Secret Service is in charge now. The security preparations in Washington are already underway, we understand, even earlier than had been planned. But there is concern that because the mob was so successful in breaching the Capitol, this may have emboldened them to launch perhaps even greater attacks or some other form of greater violence. What do you think the greatest risk is now?
Well, the chatter, so to speak, on the dark web and elsewhere has been to come to Washington, the Million March of the Militias, or the Million Militia March, and they are calling for coming into Washington armed. That would be a big mistake on their part. They will be met with a force that they've never had to contend with in the past. So it's a lot of chest beating and bravado on their part to try to stimulate their people to come to Washington to create chaos and possibly inflict death and destruction. And so I was in the city yesterday. I was also at the Pentagon. I can tell you that the city is well prepared this time. I saw they shut off most of the avenues to the Capitol, and they are going to be heavily armed. And I think if the people come and thinking they're going to get away with what they got away with by breaching the Capitol Hill this past week, it will not happen this time.
15,000 National Guard officers, we understand, already 6,000 in place from 6 different states. And I would suspect there's a lot more happening that we're not aware of and aren't being told about in advance of this potential threat. Knowing what we know now, though, about the seeming lack of preparedness and the inability of police to deal with what happened a week ago, You have Joe Biden saying he's not afraid of being sworn in at the Capitol outside. Are you confident that they will be able to secure things 1 week from now?
I'm reasonably confident. You can never say all is well, given the toxic environment we're in. I think we'll be as prepared as we can possibly be in a still open civil society without imposing another version of martial law so that no one is allowed to come to the Capitol. So they can come. They should come in peace, and they should come unarmed. If they resort to violence, I think they're going to pay a very heavy penalty. I hope that in the ones who came to the Capitol last week, that the FBI and our intelligence agencies track down every one of them, arrest them, charge them with criminal activity, and send them to jail. That's the biggest message we can send to the people who are still laboring on the illusion that the stolen from them. Mm-hmm. That is President Trump doing what he always does. Anything that doesn't go his way has to be rigged. Well, it wasn't rigged. It was a fair election, and his responsibility as the President of the United States is to tell his supporters, 70, 74 million or 80 million, tell his supporters to stand down and abide by the rule of law. It was a fair election. He lost. Go fight it another time. Every 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, we have an opportunity to elect people who reflect our views. That's the way the system is supposed to work. It has worked. This is an aberration. It's abnormal. And he has been an aberrational president in terms of he has not carried out the duties and not carried out his oath of office to protect and defend, to preserve the Constitution. He has violated that, and he should be removed.
I was struck by a number of things you said there. When you talked about the people who are being investigated now, it certainly was striking that they are facing potentially very serious charges, sedition and conspiracy charges, and they look to have more than 150 different suspects right now. So that investigation trying to send a very strong message. But you also said something about the toxic environment in which you find the United States right now. Something that struck me as I was just reaffirming the facts about your biography. As a Republican senator and representative from Maine, served as a Secretary of Defense under a Democratic president, you were called a maverick centrist, a moderate Republican, but a maverick centrist. You're a rare bird in the climate today. I'm wondering, how did things get so bad, Secretary Cohen, and how does it end?
Well, unfortunately, we've come to the point where we're no longer just competing ideologically or politically. And we have two parties, and they represent different approaches to the role of government in our lives. I've always been in the center, but I've been trained as a lawyer and understand the rule of law is so central to our society, our democracy. And if we don't believe in the rule of law, then we can't claim to be a democratic society, but it's just simply one that's ruled by majority under all circumstances. And that's not our republic. It's not what we're supposed to represent to the world. Again, I believe in competition. I believe that as an athlete in high school and college, that we compete fairly. And when the competition is over, we say one side won, and we'll fight and we'll compete 2 years from now, and 4 and 6. That's the way the system works. And for those who have tried to assemble to say we're going to overturn that, we're not going to accept the winner under the circumstances, they are not patriots. They are puppets of the president, and the president is, I can only say they're cheering in Moscow right now. Putin is cheering in terms of what has happened here. He could not have helped for more assistance from our president in carrying out his bucket list. If you look down Putin's bucket list, undermine confidence in the people, by the American people in their government, undermine confidence in the media, undermine confidence in the intelligence community, undermine confidence in the allies of the United States, undermine the relationship between the EU. All of that is on Putin's either to-do list or bucket list, and President Trump has been carrying it out. Whether willfully, unknowingly, he's been carrying out that list of Putin. So Putin's very happy. Mm-hmm. And the American people who don't see that really are taking our country down a path which it will no longer be a democracy. So that's what's at stake here, and that's why this vote today is so important, saying no president has been impeached twice in our history. Again, I don't think the impeachment matters to President Trump because he doesn't care about history. He doesn't care about the culture of our society. He only cares about power. And his supporters are only concerned about preserving white privilege, or what I would call white power. These are the same folks who've been with us throughout our history, from the slavery days to the Jim Crow days to the segregation days to the Ku Klux Klan days. They're the same people who want to use violence to intimidate those who are seeking not revenge. As one of the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement said, we should feel grateful that all they want is justice and not revenge. And so what they want to do is suppress the rights of others to achieve equality and justice under law. That's what's inscribed over the archives of, I should say, the pediments of the Supreme Court. Yes. Equal justice under law. These supporters of the president don't want that for other people. They want to preserve white privilege, white power, and to suppress the votes of anyone who doesn't look like us, is either brown or black or Asian, anything but the white supremacists. And I have to ask myself, what is so supreme about those people who charge the Hill? Take a look. What do they have to claim supremacy about? In any way, their actions, their attitudes, what they've done. They've killed 5 people, killed a police officer. Is that something to be proud of? Is that a patriotic act, what they did? I think not. I think that they have undermined our democracy, and it's going to continue to be a problem. Yes. This is not over with Trump. It's not over with when he leaves the White House. We're going to have to deal with the society in terms of getting information, truth, facts, and get back to believing in ourselves as a democratic society.
So on the precipice of something you haven't seen in the 244-year history of your country, with a second impeachment of a sitting president, look beyond just for one moment quickly for a final question, Secretary Cohen, if you would, because you've indicated what the future looks like. But I'm interested in what happens, too, for Republicans. On January 21st, does the Republican Party continue to be the party of Donald Trump?
Well, it may very well be. We have at least 2 parties, and I'm not sure how they can be reconciled together. You have Lynn Cheney following her dad's lead. Remember, it was Dick Cheney who initially called for the writing of the letter by the 10 former secretaries of defense. So he is a real conservative. I've disagreed with him many times in years past, but I consider him a friend. But he's a real conservative, and what conservatism means in our country. And his daughter is carrying out his legacy. She's speaking out about what republicanism should mean to the country if this is not an impeachable act, if this is not fomenting a revolution against the state of the United States. And we can't point to something that could be much worse. So I think there are those true conservatives, and then there is the right wing and the extremist part of the party that has the support of Donald Trump. These are the folks that he is referring to and calling upon to do his bidding. I don't consider them Republicans. I don't consider them conservatives. I think that they are Trumpisms. They are Trumpians, I guess I would say. But I don't consider them to be the core of what used to be the Republican Party. I think Liz Cheney and others who are on the Hill who are going to speak out today are the true Republicans.
Many people hoping that is indeed the case. Thank you so much for helping us understand the historic nature of the day, the stakes at play here, and for joining our program. A pleasure to speak to you, Secretary Cohen.
Thank you, Heather, very much.